We are going to call this workshop of the Martin County School Board to order. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Mrs. Falls, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Roberts?
I'm here.
Mrs. Powers? Mrs. Pritchett?
Here.
Mrs. Russell?
Here. Please let the record reflect Mr. DiTerlizzi was not able to be here today. At this time, we will have open to the public. We do not have any comment cards at this time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak? Seeing none, that concludes our public comment. Moving on to our school board policies. Items number 3.40 and 3.44, which are policies 6330 and 8510, have been pulled from the agenda for this evening. We will see them at a later date. Yes, 6330 and then 8510. 8510 is the last one. 40 and 44. Item number 3.01, policy number 1001, district organization. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Okay, thank you. Item number 3.02, policy number 1030.01, development of administrative procedures. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board?
So I just had one comment. So it says that as long as they're consistent with board policy. So I know that on our agenda, we normally have that section. Those will continue to be posted there and for the board. And if the policy reflects a procedure, it's your job to then initiate that, but it'll still be posted. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on, item number 3.03, policy number 1119, 3119, and 4119, posting of vacancies. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with this recommendation?
So it comes back, we approve the administrative procedure if it has to do with rule, I think it's 120. That's the administrative procedures we would be approving. So we wouldn't be approving every administrative procedure. We'll still be seeing them, correct?
Correct.
We'll still be seeing them in the information piece, but the ones that are flagged that have to be from the Rule 120, then we will see those to approve, yeah.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
So I just have one question in general about all the policies that are being rescinded. It only says that we recommend rescinding. It doesn't reference policies where that this is covered. So can we get that information on what policies we would refer to on that topic moving forward?
Yes, in some cases, there will not be a Neola policy that has, that matches a Martin policy. So where there is a Martin policy and no Neola policy, we will let you know where in a handbook or in a standard operating procedure that lies.
Okay, so when you say your policy regarding posting vacancies, so there is no, according to this, there is no other policy that exists?
There is no statute-driven policy that Neola has, therefore it is in the Human Resources Handbook on how we post vacancies. So we can reference the handbook for HR as to where those vacancies lie. How long we post a vacancy, how long a vacancy for administrators needs to be posted, how long a vacancy for an instructional position must be posted.
So, Mrs. Powers, what I'm looking for is the administrative procedure. So if it doesn't have a policy that came from Neola, right, that this is usurping, because, you know, I think the problem of us having policies that weren't Neola-driven is, as the law changes, there is nobody checking to see whether those policies need to be adjusted or changed. But I think what I'm looking at is, the way I'm planning on dealing with it, and maybe Mr. Main could help, is looking to the administrative procedure piece, that if there is no matching policy, looking for the administrative procedure that addresses that piece, so that when that's posted for us for information, for the information piece, if we have questions and want to modify it, then we would be requesting that that piece, the administrative procedure piece, be modified. Does that?
Yeah, and so what I would like to see, and it doesn't have to be right now, but for all of these that are being rescinded, that we get the administrative procedure that accompanies that, not that it's bunched in on an agenda.
Sure.
So that because we're rescinding all of these, we probably would want to know, I would want to know where they are so that we can look at those.
Sure.
And if there is a reason for us to have, again, I haven't looked at all of them. I was assuming that it was somewhere else, but I want to understand where it is and what that procedure says. And then I guess our remedy would then be to say, come back to a board meeting and say, I would like to review the policy on, or the procedure, bring to the board because I have some changes on whatever, posting of vacancies.
Correct.
Any other questions on this one? Thank you. Item number 3.04, policy number 1128, employment contracts. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Seeing none, we will move forward. Item number 3.05, policy number 1128.01, working days. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? And are there any questions, changes, or comments? Item number 3.06, policy number 1130, appointment, assignment, transfer, and promotion of administrators. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 2 of 3, select fourth paragraph, which should read as follows. The superintendent shall inform the board for any temporary reassignment that will exceed 15 school days. Page 3 of 3, select option 2. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.07, policy number 1210, standards of ethical conduct. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.08, policy number 1210.01, 3210.01, and 4210.01, self-reporting of criminal charges and traffic citations. The self-reporting is covered under policies 1210, 3210, and 4210, so the recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Good? All right, thank you. Item number 3.09, policy number 1244 and 3244, professional leave. The recommendation is to also rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 310, policy number 1245, principals meetings. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.11, policy number 1422, benefits for non-represented staff. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.12, policy number 2206, lesson plans. The recommendation is to rescind this policy as well. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.13, policy number 2271, articulation and access to Florida College System institutions. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Any questions, changes, or comments? Item number 3.14, policy number 2430.01, requirements for extracurricular participation. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.15, policy number 2515, school supplies sale. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.16, policy number 3120.07, Co-curricular responsibilities. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.17, policy number 3130, appointment, assignment, transfer, and promotion of instructional staff. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 2 of 4, first paragraph should read as follows. The board shall act no later than June 30th on the superintendent's nominations of supervisors, principals, and members of the instructional staff. Fourth paragraph should read as follows. The superintendent must seek board approval for any temporary assignment that will exceed 30 school days. Page 4 of 4, select option 2. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Roberts?
So on page 2, I think that we should keep the Neola recommendations instead of the 2 suggested that are there. The first one being the top sentence that talks about the board shall act not later than 3 weeks. The Neola recommendation is the board shall act not later than 3 weeks following the receipt of state mandated testing scores and data, including school grades, or June 30th, whichever is later, on the superintendent's nominations of supervisors, principals, and members of the instructional staff. And my reasoning is, by changing it to just June 30th, we're limiting the flexibility. The only time that it becomes important is if the test scores are delayed past the June 30th date. So imagine if it's test scores don't come out until July, August, or whatever, we're pigeonholed. It doesn't mean that the superintendent can't make his recommendation before the June 30th date, but by adopting a policy that's not the Neola recommendation, it doesn't give the flexibility to use the information that came from the test-related things. Comments?
Everyone okay with that?
And then the second piece is the one where the Neola's recommendation is the superintendent shall inform the board of any temporary assignment that will exceed, and we've inserted 30 school days. On policy 1130, we kept Neola's recommendation that the superintendent shall inform the board of any temporary reassignment that will exceed the 15 school days. But I think by changing this to the superintendent seeking board approval for temporary assignment that will exceed 30 days, I think that we're making it somewhat cumbersome, and we're interfering. He would still need to inform us, but now we're interfering with what the statutory duty is that he plays staff, et cetera. So I think that one should stay the way that Neola is recommending it, where he informs us and he's not looking for our approval.
Does everyone feel about that? Are you okay? Ours?
I honestly, I need to think about that one for a little bit.
Okay, so there's 3 of them, and one is the administrative staff, one is the teachers, and one is the support staff. And the way that this came recommended to us, it's keeping the administrative staff with the Neola recommendation that he informed the board. The other 2, the support staff and the instructional staff, it's changing it from the Neola recommendation of informing to looking to seek board approval for temporary reassignments.
And I would think it would just be the opposite, that it would be more important for us to approve the administrative than it would be for us to then just be informed about the other changes. But I think
Correct, and yeah, and that's what I thought initially too, that if you're gonna, it struck me as odd that we're changing the ones for instructional and for support, but we're not changing the one that's for administrative. And I kind of feel like the process of where he's the one who does the employee placement, et cetera, we end up improving it. But then if this is a temporary assignment, I'm okay with being informed that rather than getting our approval to do it. I mean, I think it pushes
it
it.
also depends on how it's used, right?
Yes.
Because a temporary assignment that exceeds 30 days, when does temporary end and it become permanent?
Well, and I think that's the piece that when he's informing us, that's the question that I would expect him to say, that this is a temporary assignment that's exceeding 30 days, and I'm expecting this to last for 45 days or 32 days or something, and I will come back and let you know if it looks like it needs to be longer, et cetera. So imagine a position, whether it's administrative or instructional or support staff, where you're utilizing that and you're saying, I need a temporary assignment to do this. I would expect, as you're informing me of that I'm doing it for longer that period of time, that the correct process is for the superintendent at that time to say, this is how long I think it's going to be, and that we keep updated on that, so that it's not a permanent reassignment. You know, you could imagine a temporary reassignment of a teacher the second day after school starts. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to send you to a different school, and it's going to exceed 30 days, so I'm notifying you that I'm sending this teacher from this school to this school, instructional staff, and no intention of making it's going to be for the whole year. But there's, you know, it's going to exceed the 30 days. I would expect Mr. Main or any superintendent to be telling us, because I think that's what, as he informs us, that would be the question that we would be raising. You're informing me that you have a temporary, Martha Washington is being reassigned from J.D. Parker to Felix for a term longer than 30 days. It's because I have a personal situation where I'm missing a teacher at Felix and I need this one to go cover for that one. I expect it to be 60 days. And I expect, as he would tell us, it's going to be more than the 30 days, that it would be, that the first question I would say, as you inform me, is if it goes more, you're telling me you need 60 days. If it goes more than 60 days, and it looks like it's going to be that, you need to come back and tell us again. I don't expect you to use this as a method to get somebody as a permanent long-term reassignment.
Well, and I guess my question would be, how does that work? How does that notification work? Individually? Are we asking them to notify us at a board meeting? Not that I think, I just don't want this policy to be used to circumvent our hiring process. And, you know,
Right.
if there is a temporary assignment, I don't want it to be used to permanently place someone to avoid having to advertise properly and open it up to all employees. That's all I'm saying.
And so the solution that I see to that is adding to all three of these policies at a regularly scheduled board meeting. So the information would come to us as an agenda item under information, et cetera, that you're informing us at that time. And so that gives us a chance to know.
Well, it should come to us as an item that is an action item, and if the board chooses to take action on it or not, or allowing it, continue to extend it, I think that that's going to have to, otherwise, it's just buried in those reports. I mean,
Well, then what you're looking at is you're looking at to keep the language that's saying that he will seek our approval for temporary reassignments.
and I'm not saying, I do think there has to be some flexibility, but again, I just want, like, what is temporary? What does that mean? And what if a position does come open and there are multiple people in the district that would qualify for it, and we're just going to place someone in there temporary for the rest of the year on the day 2 of the school year? I just see a lot of room for not avoiding hiring
Yeah.
people and allowing them to seek advancement when a position comes open. Because I get it, when school starts and you're moving and you just want a warm body and you need somebody right away, that's one thing. But when you say, oh, I'm going to place someone for the remainder of the year, I don't think that's temporary anymore. That's why I think we need to think about it, this one a little bit more. I'd like to have the discussion with the superintendent.
So can we pull those three then? If you want to pull the 1130, the 3130, and the 4130, to kind of figure out what that would look like and how that would be. I think adding that as a checkoff was kind of an easy out on Neola's part for not defining temporary, not giving a method of notification, not giving and that's true. It's not if it's noticed to us, informing us at a regular board meeting, it puts us in a position where we can discuss it. If you're informing us individually, it puts us in a position where we can't discuss it. if it's, but, and I don't want to tie your hands and make it worse where you've got to seek our approval to do it. Because I think you're erring in making those recommendations for support staff and for MCEA or instructional staff. You're making it so that you're making it more stringent upon you. And I'm thinking that there's some happy land in between that isn't doing it like that. So you want to take those three then, Marcia?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're taking 11:30, 31:30, and 41:30.
Okay, bring those back at a later date.
Yeah, and are we okay with the one changing, and it's only on 31:30? Are we okay with changing that from just the June 30th to using Neola's language to allowing you to use test scores in the 3 weeks after?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so so Ms. Falls, we're okay with that. The only piece that we're questioning is that one sentence on page 2 then. Thank you.
For all three, yep.
It's just hard though, just because if the test scores don't come until after the 30th, and then we can't initiate final contracts. So just to keep that in mind for, we would be then
Well, and it gives
not
him,
finalizing contracts that would be effective July 1. So they would have to have something temporary in that space that we're going to continue paying them outside of a full year contract.
right.
So I don't want that to be an administrative burden either. So we
Yeah,
just need to
but
think
I mean,
through.
and he's always allowed to use it by the June 30th date. It doesn't prevent him from doing that. But if
Right.
there's some unforeseen situation that the scores don't come for an extended period of time and we want to have some flexibility, or we want to have the superintendent have some flexibility as to what he's doing. And it's only in the instructional piece that's there, so. Thank you.
Any other questions? Item number 3.18, policy number 3245, faculty meetings. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.19, policy number 4130, appointment, assignment, transfer, and promotion of support staff. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the
We're
superintendent's?
pulling that
No,
one.
that's the one
We're
that's-
pulling
Oh,
that
wait a
one.
minute, sorry. Yes. Yep, got it. Yep, sorry. Item number 3.20, policy number 5111.03, children and youth in foster care. This is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 2 of 4, dispute resolution, Department of Children and Families, should be inserted into first and fourth paragraphs. Fourth paragraph should read as follows. Since the Department of Children and Families holds ultimate legal responsibility for making the best interest determination for the foster child in their care, if the dispute cannot be resolved, the Department of Children and Families will make the final determination. Page 3 of 4, transportation services, select who reside within the district, select district's local point of contact, select until a plan for providing transportation is developed, the district shall provide the necessary transportation. Select district's local point of contact. Select until a plan for providing transportation is developed, if necessary, the district shall provide the necessary transportation. Page 4 of 4, first paragraph, Transportation Department. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board on this one?
Have select districts local.
I think it's two different,
It's in two places.
it's in two different places.
So regarding, I do kind of have some questions about this policy. I just want to make sure that we're putting the best interest of the child first, and it's not necessarily about, because a lot of times in foster care, you can have a foster child that resides right now in Martin County, and we actually had a case like this, and I went to Children's Services Council through our funding to fund this child being able to remain, and for us to pay, at the Early Learning Coalition, to pay for their aftercare, because their parent, the foster parent who resided in Martin County, a custodial relative took the child in their care that lived in St. Lucie County. So there was a lot of back and forth. We ended up working it out, but I just want to be sure that we're not, because when a child is in foster care and experiencing that trauma, the change of schools is very traumatic for them as well. So I just want to make sure we're limiting that for foster children specifically, the moving around and forcing them to change schools, that transportation and things like that should not be a barrier. So I just want to make sure that this policy doesn't tie our hands.
So when we were reviewing this policy, Mrs. Powers, page 3 of 4, we made efforts to make sure that that was in there. So to your point, and you're absolutely right, there is a section for when the student lives in zone and is of foster care, and when there's a termination made for a student that's in foster care that is out of zone, that transportation would continue to be provided.
Where is that one?
And
Where is
If you
that?
look at page 3 of 4, and that will be under the section of transportation services. Transportation services shall be provided in the most cost-effective way, and then it lists 2 paragraphs. Both give both options for you.
Okay.
And so it covers all 3 situations. It covers a foster care child who is living in the district. It covers a foster care child who is going to one of our schools, living in the district and moving out of the district. It covers a foster care child who is going to one of our schools who is living out of the district and moves into the district. So it covers all, so that if they manage, so if they're out of, it keeps them in their home school, is what the last 2 sections do. The top one keeps them residing in the district and taking care of that one, but the bottom 2 take care of them, the piece that you're talking about, Marcia, which I remember that case. It's making sure that they can stay in their, that as they have all the other trauma in their life, they can stay in the school where they know the teacher and where they have friends and where all that is going on.
So our
regardless of
goal
where
is
you're
not
moving.
to find other ways that we're going to take care of that child until there is another method.
No.
So that last section there where we select, until a plan for providing transportation is developed, if necessary, the district shall provide the necessary transportation. We do not want to put that burden on the family. We will continue to provide that transportation.
And then if an adjacent county doesn't agree, we'll continue to do that.
Right, and then and this last page shows that if we keep track of it, we get paid back for it anyway, so. Yeah, for the transportation piece, so.
Well, and I know this is very similar to homeless children as well, that we,
Yeah.
this is the same situation for our homeless population.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Item number 3.21, policy number 5200, attendance. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 2 of 5, first paragraph B, should read as follows. Upon each unexcused absence or absence for which the reason is unknown, the principal or designee shall contact the student's parent to determine the reason for the absence. E1 should read as follows. If a parent refused to participate in the remedial strategies determined by the problem-solving team, MTSS, because she or he believes that the strategies are unnecessary or inappropriate, the parent may appeal to the site-based administrator. E2 should read as follows. The next level of appeal will be heard by a district-level hearing officer/committee who will make recommendations for final action to the superintendent. E3 should read as follows. If the superintendent's final determination is that the strategies of the problem-solving team/MTSS are appropriate, and the parent still refuses to participate or cooperate, the superintendent may seek criminal prosecution for noncompliance with compulsory school attendance. Page 3 of 5, F, second paragraph, should read as follows. Under the direction of the superintendent, the designee shall give written notice that requires enrollment or attendance within 3 days after the date of notice, in person or by return receipt mail, to the parent when no valid reason is found for a student's non-enrollment in school. FA should read as follows. If the notice and requirement are ignored, the designee shall report the case to the superintendent, who may refer the case to the child study team at the school. The student would be assigned according to attendance area policies or to the case staffing committee. established pursuant to Florida Statute 984.12. Make up for absences, first paragraph should read as follows. For excused absences, the student shall have a reasonable amount of time, up to 3 school days, to complete makeup work. Principals may grant extensions to the makeup time limit for extenuating circumstances. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board on this policy?
Do we really need the principal to make that extension?
If you look up the definition of principal, we did have this discussion. It could be a designee as well. It does not have to be the principal, but principal does allow for designee.
Okay.
Is it that whole
In
uppercase,
that,
lowercase
in that
thing?
case, not necessarily, because the principal is starting the sentence, and it's starting with a capital letter. So you might want to add or designate to that one, because since principal's in the beginning of a sentence, it has a capital P, which would mean that you can't do a designee. Right, Ms. Smalls?
We'll change it. She's marking it down. We did check that because we had the same question. We didn't want to put the principal in the position to be the only one at the school that could make that extension. But we'll
Yeah,
get
so in that case, you need to add or designate just because it's the beginning of a sentence and it's a capital letter, yeah.
Well, I think the majority of these probably, if it were beyond 3 days, would never make it to the principal because the teacher would make that decision unless it was some sort of weird, but I just don't want it to be that the principals have to make the decision.
Item number 3.22, policy number 5200.01, attendance record. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.23, policy number 5330, use of medications. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments? Item number 3.24, policy number 5340, student accidents and illness. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.25, policy number 5470, graduation recognition program for standard diploma students. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.26, policy number 5500, student conduct. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.27, policy number 5505, gang control. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.28, policy number 5515, use of motor vehicles. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments? Item number 3.29, policy number 5610, removal out of school suspension and expulsion of students. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 3 of 7, out of school suspension from school or suspension from riding school bus. Second paragraph, select for a period not to exceed then 10 school days. Second to last paragraph, second sentence should read as follows. The student shall have a reasonable amount of time, up to 3 school days following suspension, to complete the schoolwork missed and shall do so on his or her own initiative. Page 4 of 7, select appeal and all options. Select delayed admissions, select waiver of suspension, schoolwork assigned during out-of-school suspension. Select first option. Page 5 of 7, select first and second paragraphs. Page 6 of 7, appeal. Delete all language after first sentence. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Ms. Roberts?
Go ahead. So I had a couple. On page 4, under appeal, you have appeal, select appeal in all options. I believe in the second paragraph, you meant to say, select the second option and select superintendent instead of board. correct? And then on page 5, I think, hold on, let me see.
5 of 7.
5 of 7. Five of 7, you have the first two options both selected.
Which page are you on now?
5 of 7, so hold on, I just picked that one up a minute ago, as
The
defined by
select-
policy,
First and second paragraphs.
shall be retained in accordance, okay, that's okay, but further down, under disciplinary placement and expulsion hearing, the second paragraph, all parties will be given reasonable notice of the hearing, not less than 14 days. The 14-day requirement may be waived by the, I think we need to select board on that, since we don't have a presiding officer. You see what I'm talking about? The green area, second paragraph under disciplinary placement and expulsion hearing. Good with that?
Everyone good
Yeah,
with
I
that?
just have one, so on the, wait, let me get back to it. The appeal, it says, prior to a suspension, the principal will hold an informal hearing. There, it says nothing about notifying the parent. I believe there is something in statute that requires prior to suspension that the parent is
What page are
notified.
you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 3 of 7. It's,
Oh, I see, halfway down the page.
Yeah. so there's nothing about parental notification. So I think we need to get the language from the statute.
I think, I thought I saw it somewhere higher. Hold on. Not to exceed
And a lot of
10 days.
times, it's just, this is a whole frustrating thing for me, because by the time, if parents aren't notified, by the time you initiate the appeal process, the suspension is already over, because they send the kids home that day. It's like, where's an appeal in that?
I
If
think
parents
you're,
aren't notified.
so in the second paragraph, it has the principal or designee shall make a good faith effort to employ parental assistance or alternative methods of dealing with the student and shall document such efforts. Do you see that?
I see it.
So I was thinking that that was the notification for the informal hearing piece.
I don't think that that's what,
You don't think that covers?
no.
Where the Neola deleted the good faith, they just put in the principal will make a good faith effort to contact the student's parent or guardian by telephoning immediately after making the decision to suspend.
Okay.
Yeah, but the problem is if the principal's giving in prior to suspending, there is no parental. So what's happening is you did something bad. I try to call the parent. I don't reach the parent. I have a little informal hearing with the student without the parent present. I decide to suspend the student, and then I'm sending a notification to the parent saying, by the way, your kid was suspended. And I think that's the piece that's lacking the parental notification prior to suspension. You know,
And we know that typically when a principal suspends for more than, does the 10 days, it's pretty serious. It's a pretty serious violation, typically. But it's those 1, 2, and 3 day suspensions, because then if you initiate the appeal process, you really don't get an appeal. You've already served your time and you're back in school, and unless a parent, and I mean, we did have a case that happened, that the parent continued to fight it.
can we pull
And got
that
an
one and
attorney.
ask Neola how they're dealing with the parental notification prior to the suspension? Specifically citing the informal hearing. So when you're talking about that informal hearing language, because the way it's written is Jennifer does something bad, I try to call the parent, then I have an informal hearing, then I suspend the kid for 3 days, then I send a written notice by US mail saying she's out for 3 days. The parent doesn't get it for 3 days. It's already over and it's done with, and the parent had nothing to do with anything. She's just out and she's suspended, and parents getting the notice after the suspension is over with. It's not a, so if you can check with, can we pull that one then and ask Neola
We'll
about
pull
that?
it and we'll have staff look through it and we can contact Neola. There's a few places in here where I'm seeing, but we'll take a look.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Item number 3.30, policy number 5610.05, participation in the extracurricular activities. Is the board okay with accepting all recommendations?
Hang on, I think, let me make sure I got everything I was. Hang on. Page 4, paragraph 2, superintendent, page 5, paragraph 6. Okay, yeah, I'm good, sorry.
It's okay. Any questions about 3.30? Okay. Item number 3.31, policy number 5722, school-sponsored publications and productions. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 1 of 11, select third paragraph and select postings of social media as defined in bylaw 0100 and newsletters of announcements transmitted by email. Under term performance, paragraph, select first paragraph. School community, paragraph should read as follows. For purposes of this policy, school community is defined to include students, board employees, i.e. administrators and professional and classified staff, and parent and family members, members authorized or otherwise permitted by the superintendent, and those who have been issued credentials to access the district's secure portal. Page 2 of 11, select option 1 and see Board Policy 9160, Public Attendance at School Events. Page 3 of 11, select first paragraph under option A. Page 9 of 11, select option 3. General prohibitions, select paragraph B. Select paragraph C, which should read as follows. Solicit funds for non-school organizations or institutions when such solicitation has not been approved by the superintendent. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.32, policy number 5771, search and seizure. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.33, policy number 5830, student fundraising. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 2 of 5, select option 2. Page 4 of 5, select option right above option number 1 and select superintendent. Page 5 of 5, select option 2 and select of the superintendent. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.34, policy number 5885, parades. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.35, policy number 6114, cost principles, spending federal funds. This is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola policy? Item number 3.36, policy number 6220, budget preparation. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 1 of 2, select option 2. Select at least sufficient to comply with state law and policy 6210, fiscal planning. Page 2 of 2, select second paragraph. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 3.37, policy number 6230, tax budget hearing. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Is the board okay with accepting this recommendation? Item number 3.38, policy number 6320.01, vendor preference. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Item number 3.39, policy number 6325, procurement and federal grants. This is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendations as follows? Page 1 of 7, select option 1. Page 3 of 7, delete first paragraph, micro purchases. First paragraph, $10,000, select second paragraph. Page 4 of 7, small purchases, first paragraph, $50,000. Second sentence should read as follows. Small purchase procedures require that price or rate quotations shall be obtained from 2 or more qualified sources. Sealed bids, first paragraph, should read as follows. Sealed competitive bids shall be obtained when the purchase of and contract for single items of supplies, materials, or equipment which amounts to more than $50,000, and when the board determines to build, repair, enlarge, improve, or demolish a school building/facility, the cost of which will exceed $50,000. Paragraph A, under sealed bids, select an adequate number of. Page 5 of 7, paragraph 2B, select adequate number of. Contract/price analysis, select $250,000. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Roberts?
On page 3, where we're deleting the first paragraph about pre-qualified lists of persons, after the drafting note, we need to delete that next paragraph that talks about pre-qualified lists of people. It goes with that one above.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? Thank you. Item number 3.41, policy number 6560, retiree health insurance. I'm opening this policy for discussion. Did I? No, that one got pulled. That one got pulled. This one is being open for discussion. Would anyone like to share their thoughts or on changes they feel should be made to this policy?
Are there recommendations?
No, not at this time. It was strictly left as a discussion item.
Yes, I have some comments.
Yes, Ms. Roberts?
So this policy came about at the point in time that we were correcting our health insurance to get people, retirees who were over age 65, to do Medicare and Medicare supplements. And it was quite contentious, and it was went on for a bit. And one of the things we did was that last page that talks about the districts, actually the last paragraph, which talks about a Martin County health insurance subsidy. I believe that language mirrors the state's language, because right now the state gives a insurance subsidy. The amount of the state insurance subsidy has increased to $7.50. We're kind of the only district I know of that's giving a health insurance subsidy for that. So, but that's okay. That's neither here nor there. The piece that's that I think that we overlooked when we did this, on the bottom of the first page, where it talks about retiree insurance under the age of 65 and not Medicare eligible. The long discussion that was had at the time was that people who were retiring from the district under the age of 65, who had made their retirement plans, gone into drop, made their retirement plans, counting on the district to continue at that point in time, to continue to pay 100% of that $6,500 and to continue to give them money so that they would be able to have health insurance benefits, which was something that we decided at the time that we would take care of people that were under the age of 65 because they were not Medicare eligible and they were not able to go on to a supplement plan, and that we would create a situation where, okay, we'll help you based on your years of experience, so that if you've worked with us for you have 30 years of experience, we will continue until you, so let's say you'd retire at age 60, for the next 5 years, we'll get you there because you've already retired. I think the piece that we failed to do at that point in time was sunset it at any point in time, so that that piece has remained there. And for instance, if I was an employee that was deciding right now whether I was going to retire or not, I would look to the policy and say, I've got 30 years of experience, they're going to pay 100% until I reach age 65. I'm 55 years old, I'm going to get my next 10 years of insurance paid because the policy says that I'm going to be doing that. Whereas I think that if we give some notification, whether it's 10 years of notification, and say that this provision is sunsetting at a certain point in time, that it gives people enough notification before they enter drop, before they make their retirement plans, to know that, okay, if my plan was to retire, I'm 50 years old, my plan was to retire in 6 years at age 56, and I'm counting on a policy that's giving me full health insurance, I would at least know that, no, I better not do that because I still have a health insurance issue until I reach that age.
That's fair.
So,
Does everyone
do you
else
remember
feel-
those discussions?
Yes.
Very well.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
In a nutshell,
Yeah.
in one sentence, are you saying we need?
So I'm saying, I don't believe it would be fair to just delete it. Okay, delete that section about under 65, because you may have somebody who entered drop 2 years ago who's under the age of 60, who's 58 years old, who's counting on the district paying their insurance, okay? But I think that for upcoming people who are planning on retiring, and what's the drop? Is it still 5 years or is it 8 years?
8 years now.
8 years. So if I'm planning on entering drop, like next year, I'm giving 8 years notice of when I'm stopping. But let's say I started working for the district when I was 20 years old. I have 30 years of experience. I'm 50 years old right now. I want to retire when I'm 58 years old. I enter drop. I've got 8 years where I can't back out of it once I've entered it. But I also know that when I retire in 8 years, at age 58, that according to this policy, you're going to continue paying my health insurance at 100, the 6,500 or whatever the number is, from age 58 till the age 65.
So you're saying we should lower,
I'm saying I think that we should take that retiree insurance under the age of 65 and not Medicare eligible and add language that says for retirees under the age of 65 and not Medicare eligible who retire on or before a certain date, or add a language that says this sunsets 10 years from now, or do something so that it doesn't continue on into perpetuity. That's what I'm saying. It was meant at the time we did it as a stopgap for the X number of people at the time. I don't even remember. It wasn't that many people. It was meant for a stopgap for the number of people that were in the system that were retirees or planning on retiring who were under the age of 65.
Well, I think 5 years is plenty of time to plan for that.
that's kind of
But what,
5 years.
because I want to understand, first of all, how many people is this going to impact? I know that this was a huge discussion when we did it. I don't think it's a good idea to have this policy. I think that I understand that it had been like that forever and ever. And when did we do that? What, 10 years ago? Maybe a little less than that. I don't know if we start changing the percentages now and kind of ramping it down slowly as time goes for starting at a certain year. Because otherwise, I don't think the sunset in 10 years, I don't think that's really starts to address the issue. Maybe we just need to ramp it down, the percentages. And I know that we're probably one of the very few school districts that even does this anymore. I know state employees don't get anything. I mean, they're eligible to purchase always buy the insurance that is available, whatever the state plan is, they're able to buy it. at the cost, not for, they don't get anything for free. So I'd like to understand what those numbers look like.
You want to go ahead and pull this one? So that way
I
we
mean,
can
I think
kind
we
of-
have to have a lot more information before we,
Yes, Ms. Pritchett?
Don, do you think you could do some sort of research what other districts are doing and maybe come into a little bit?
I can tell you 99.9% positive that we're the only school district that provides our own health insurance subsidy. And I went back and rewatched, because I was bored one day, the hours and hours of board meetings and workshops, but Mrs. Roberts' memory is correct. It kind of served as a stopgap for that time and the time period.
The under age 65
Yeah.
piece, yeah.
Because you didn't want to, the board at that time didn't want to harm those that were under 65 that were getting close to retirement. But it's been a policy of the board since November of 2015, so it's about 9 years old. Our department, we can work with the Garen Group and provide you some financial information to give you some idea of what numbers you're dealing with. I have some prepared for the last year or two, but we'd be prepared to discuss in more detailed.
well, and I'd like to see a ramp, kind of like a down, like ramping it down so that, if you're retiring next year, you're gonna not,
Yes, so what I'm thinking is we need information about the people who are currently utilizing the under 65, what their age piece is, okay? That's number one. Number two, we need to know who's in drop that's planning.
know are gonna
That we
retire.
know, like they've already announced they're in drop and when and how their retirement date lines up with their age. So that obviously if I started drop this year and I'm age 60, means I'm going to retire when I'm 68, which means I'm going to be in the Medicare piece and I'm not going to fall in the under 65. So we need to understand what that universe looks like. That's the first two things. I think we need to understand, we understand the health insurance subsidy. I know that when we did it, part of the reason that we were doing it was to make sure that people would be able to more than afford the Medicare supplement piece, was what the goal was. And I know that I don't know anybody who's doing their own health insurance subsidy. And I know that the state ramped up the piece that they're paying. So I don't know whether the appropriate thing for us to do is to cut it back so that, okay, if before you were getting $10, now you're going to get 5 and 5, 5 from the state and 5 from the,
we matched the state.
we
match the
matched the
state.
state.
Yeah, the
But
state-
now that the state's doing $750, if we lowered ours to $250 and made it back to the 10, right? So then the round number is 10. What that looks like as far as Medicare supplement pieces look like. So I mean, I look at it as you could, like just the health insurance subsidy, you can continue the way it is. You could pay even more, which I don't think we should be doing. You could pay less and go to the 250 number so that it corrects itself back to the $10 piece, right? Or you could eliminate it completely and say the state's giving you $750 and we're not doing it anymore. So I think those are kind of your four pieces, but I think we need to understand what does a Medicare supplement plan cost, average cost of a Medicare supplement plan, what does that look like? And I think we already know that other districts aren't doing it. So I mean, I think, and then how much it's actually costing us. Like what is the cost of our health insurance subsidy right now?
So the state went up to 750, but we're still just doing 5.
We're doing 5. So
Yeah.
right now they're getting $12.50 instead of the 10 that they used to get before. So it's, you got all those
Yeah,
pieces.
I do.
Say something?
No, I was just going to say, I do have the numbers prepared for how much the board contributed for the subsidies for the 2023 and 2024 years, but
Yeah, but I think it's going to be more helpful for us, instead of just giving us a round number, it's going to be more helpful for us to understand, this is what you contributed, and in contributing that, this is the ages of the people that you contributed it for. So that if you retired and you had 30 years, the amount of the piece that we're putting in now, not necessarily the health insurance subsidy, but that other piece, the under 65 retirement piece, how many more years do I have for her? How many more years do I have for this person? How many more years? So that just to know, like if you cut it off right now, right, and said, okay, we're done right now, what's the roll down as to how that goes away? If you cut it off for everybody who's in drop, the under 65 people that are in drop, what does that roll down look like? If you said, okay, if you're already in drop, you're planning on retiring, you're going to be 62 next year when you actually do retire, you've got this many more years, what does that piece look like? So I think we need it kind of like as a spreadsheet that shows us year by year, but is showing us the people who are already getting it and the people that we know that would be adding to that number. Does that?
Understood.
And then we can make some kind of intelligent decision if we have those numbers as to where we're going to go. Is that? Yeah. Marcia?
I mean, I have a lot more questions, but I don't think we're going to get them answered today. I think that we probably should have some individual meetings and talk about ideas but I think you're right. At some point it has to change. So.
Yeah, I think that would work best. We could set up individual meetings and make sure that we're going to present the information that you're looking for and have discussions and.
Well, and I
Go from
think
there.
we have to look at age, and then we can also do like decreasing those percentages if someone is already in drop. So even if they're in drop and they're not going to retire for 8 years, like what does that look like over the years? If you're in year 1, but you're not retiring until year 8, well, that 100% may be going away, but it may be a smaller percentage.
Right, but I think,
lesser.
but that's what I'm saying, if we get those numbers so that I know that this is the drop, this is the age, if I do this axis as age, and I know that this is the age of the person, and this is the one that I'm currently funding, and these are the ones that are in drop, I know where they are in the drop process, how many more years they have to go, where they're going to be, where they're going to fall off, and then I would be able to look at those numbers and be able to tell exactly what.
Sure. And I just want to state, just want to make sure we're clear. For the under 65, it's the percentage of the board contribution. So when we say 100%, we're not saying that we're paying 100% of the retirees' health insurance. They're getting 100% of the board's contribution once they hit 30
Right.
years, and there's, you have the parameters and as in the
Right,
board
but, and,
policy.
and
but-
it says that, but I mean, the problem is if that ever changes, when we're tied in as a percent, instead of a dollar amount, it's a percent. I mean,
It's a moving target.
yeah. Then it's, as we're making other decisions, we need to also be looking at what that universe looks like, what the retiree universe for our highly valued teachers.
Right, and that's where the language in that policy states that the percentage or amount of payment toward retiree medical coverage has varied over the years and may continue to do so in the past, and that the school board may contribute none, some, or all of the cost toward retiree medical coverage. So you've got that.
Right, we do, but
Flexibility there.
but by it being in policy, the way that we change it, remember if you went back and listened to that, the whole assurance to the retirees who were here in droves, the whole assurance to the retirees was that if, in order for us to change it, we would have to change, because it's in a policy. You would have the ability to see it ahead of time as to what the proposed change, you would have the advertised change in the advertising that we approve, you would have the ability to come in and speak on it, there would be a final hearing, and you would have some ability to represent or promote your own views as to what it is. And it isn't just an arbitrary, the board could decide without the language of saying that, because we could do that, but I mean, it's,
Right, you wouldn't, yep,
right?
yes.
Thank you. So that one's getting pulled too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And 6330 was pulled, right?
Yes. Okay, moving forward, item number 3.42, policy number 6605, crowdfunding. This is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations as follows? Page 1 of 2, select option 2, select of the superintendent. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board?
I mean, is there a reason that we would allow crowdfunding and that we would endorse that? I'm just,
Superintendent Maine, do you?
So, like I see online where teachers are using some sort of platform to raise money for their garden, to raise money for their art supplies, for a special project. Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
I mean, because I purchase things off teachers' Amazon wish lists. There's all
Right.
kinds of things that are happening now.
This
But
is
not
like
necessarily that we are endorsing that as a school board, because I don't know if we want to be in a position to start monitoring all of that. That's crowdfunding. That's getting the crowd to pay for your things that you want in your classroom. I just don't know if we want to get in the business of approving all of that.
Which a lot of things actually get ran through the Ed Foundation. I mean,
My thought would be that we can say, as a district, we are pushing all of that through the Ed Foundation. It was brought forward because obviously, it's a new policy. There are some districts absolutely that avoid crowdfunding at all costs, but then you also have some districts that did adopt a crowdfunding policy even prior to Neola putting something out. So it was just a balance of, you have teachers that are out there doing it. Do we want to be protected? We certainly can move away from it altogether and continue to push them through the Ed Foundation, knowing full well, though, that if we have teachers or staff out there that are utilizing a form of crowdfunding, they're out on their own completely. There would be at some point potentially something that could come back on them as an individual, should they not use the money in the intent in which it was received.
Well, and do we as a board want to be monitoring that, or as a district be monitoring? I don't know that we want to take on that responsibility in looking at everyone's Amazon wish list and determining if they're spending their money the way that appropriately according to policy. I think that subjects us to more issues than if, I haven't seen anything out there inappropriate, but
Who knows?
I mean, if we're going to start approving all of, or not us, but we're going to create a policy that puts that burden on our staff to approve every single list, every single thing that they do for sports or whatever it might be, a lot. And I
So-
just don't want to, I don't want teachers to feel like we're micromanaging them either.
So my question on that was, since it's at the discretion of the superintendent to approve it, I think in order to have this one go through, we need to see Neola's administrative procedure for this, for what their piece is, because I'm sure that there's an accompanying administrative procedure for the crowdfunding piece, because we have that service now with Neola to see whether it's something we want to venture into or not venture into. So then if we want to venture into it, we would at least know, but when we look at the administrative procedure, if the administrative procedure looks like this is a nightmare, then I think we would pass on this policy. But if the administrative procedure says, you can submit it to the superintendent, and as long as it is not violating these things and you're attesting that you're going to use the funds for what you say you're going to use them for, you're okay. I think the issue becomes, I don't want to tell a teacher who's used to posting, I'm an art teacher and here's my list of things that the community can buy for me to supply my art room, et cetera. And I've been doing that for years and it's been working out fine and it's no big deal. I think that's all fine and dandy. I think the problem is going to be when you have somebody who puts out a crowdfunding thing, collects the money, and then doesn't do what they say they're going to do, doesn't, and then we've had this question before, when they're buying something, and this was maybe, I don't know, like probably 8 years ago. If you're buying something for a classroom, for a teacher, are you buying it for the teacher or are you buying it for the classroom? So if you are a music teacher and I buy you a XYZ instrument, some piece of equipment, did I buy it for you individually? Or did I buy it for your classroom and for the Martin County School District, which I think is where the,
Well, if I am responding to an Amazon wish list posted by my teacher friend and I purchase something, I assume that it is for the teacher. And then if they're teaching, if it could be a consumables, it could be erasers. I doubt if they have any left over, they're going to take them with them to use them in their next classroom. So that's my assumption. That's why I think this is extremely complicated and it really sets us up to start monitoring things that do we really want to monitor. Now, I do think that if somebody does a GoFundMe and they're asking for cash for, I don't know, I need a vacation and I want to go on a cruise and on spring break.
so when,
But I don't know how can you can't really, just because they work for us, doesn't mean that we prevent them from doing that. If they were using our name, like, I work for the Martin County School District and, I haven't had, I don't know, at what point are we even allowed to get involved in something like that?
so imagine if I'm a high school and I put out there that I want a golf cart. That it would be really convenient for me. I put a funding thing out there, help me get my golf cart. It's going to cost me $5,000 for this great golf cart I want, et cetera. And I do it under my personal name. I get the money, I buy the golf cart, and then I leave and go work for another district. Is the golf cart mine, or did the people who gave you money for the golf cart think they were buying it for a particular high school?
Well, I mean, I think that can go either way. Yeah, they could think that. But if it's not coming from the Martin County School District, I don't think that we would be in that kind of position to crowdfund for, the football team needs a golf cart for the coach.
No, and I don't think we would be
wouldn't do
doing
that.
it. But I could see where a parent thinks, I'm helping a football team. I'm doing something great for my school. I'm helping a football team. And the guy was there for 3 months and then the golf cart left.
But where is our authority to regulate that? What authority do we have to say, Lee, you want to buy that golf cart for the coach because it'll really help the coach, and you do that on your own? Well, not you because you're a board member, but if you were just a parent and you wanted to do that on your own, where would be the authority? I think the only authority we would have is to allow a personal golf cart being used on our property.
Yeah.
Like, there would be a liability in that. So we wouldn't, but that would be whether they made a donation to the school directly or they let them borrow it for a month or whatever. I don't know. I just don't know where our
Option-
authority would be to regulate this.
I think
Option
that's where the
one,
policy's coming from.
yeah, option one would say we are not permitting or sanctioning it, so we're out of the business altogether. Option two would specify down at the bottom that all materials, supplies, and equipment that were purchased as a result of the crowdfunding source be left at the district, become property of the Martin County School District. So there'd be clear delineation. Now, as far as what that teacher does if they leave, we wouldn't be, there's probably a lot of things that when a teacher leaves and moves classrooms and things that even inadvertently get, misplaced or exchange of hands that were purchased. So there is no way, but there would be a property inventory number that would be assigned to that. It would be placed into inventory and it would become property of the school district.
Do you want to, like, be
can
involved in
pull-
this?
What I would like to
Sounds
do is
crazy.
pull it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just,
allow myself and staff to kind of drill down a little bit further. I have FADs in a couple of weeks. I'd like to talk to some other superintendents and see if they've gone this route, how they're navigating this, and if it's working or if they're steering clear altogether. We have time. There's nothing that says we need to do this right now, so.
and I would like to make sure that there are not unintended consequences. And I don't want, because I know it takes years and years for example, for teachers to build up their things that they have in their classroom. And then all of a sudden, we're going to tell them, oh, wait, you have to leave that behind because the child's parent that was in your class this year, they bought it, but we're going to tell you, you have to leave it, even though you go on to, you know,
Yeah,
another.
and that's why I'm thinking that the administrative procedure might have it where it follows the teacher. So if you leave, if parents gave you something and you went from one school to another, or from one classroom to another, or from one grade level to another, and you got those things, and they're, in this case, they're property of the district, or they property of the district for the use of the teacher who got the, you know, and I'm thinking those are the pieces that are in the administrative procedure piece that's saying what happens and how do you handle those pieces. But yeah, if we could pull that.
Yes, we'll just go ahead and pull that and bring it back at a later date once we have all of our information. Okay, item number 3.43, policy number 7250, commemoration of school facilities. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations?
I don't think right in the very beginning, when it says civic educational leader deceased of local, national, state, or national prominence, or an elected official who shall have left public office for a period of time not less than 5 years. I think anybody we name something after ought to be dead. I mean, I think that when they're still alive, whether it's been 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, you still run into the situation where you might end up with
We get arrested and then here we are.
something.
Right,
Something. I mean, I just think that they should always be dead.
I agree.
okay, good. That was easy.
Yeah, and I think that we need to think about like what, as a board, we're gonna have to think about like what types of facilities and how and what. And I know that Jen has been working on, you know, the ways other district facilities that maybe could generate revenue as well. But I do think that the days are gone of, you know, and it's like any other entity, like the hospital, I mean, or a college or a state college where you
Stadium, where it
could, you
goes
could
on
have
forever.
you could have literally a lab or a classroom named after someone, but that usually comes with a donation. And I don't know that we want to, how we get it, if we want to, or we will ever get into that business, but I just think we're going to have to be very thoughtful about this policy. We haven't really named a lot of things after people since, at least since I've been on the board. But number one is that, yes, they absolutely should be deceased, regardless of the position that they hold or who they are. Yes. I think this needs more work and thought.
We'll pull this one as well, sorry.
Are we pulling this one?
Yes, she just said it needs more work.
I mean,
Lots
I
more
can,
work to be done to it.
this isn't final until, we can still make changes at the next meeting.
Okay,
So there's enough time in between now and then to get those questions answered, and if there's not, then we can pull it then.
let's go ahead and change the
Yeah.
deceased part and then, I guess, get the rest of our information for the next one.
Because it won't mean anything until the next meeting. Make any
Right.
changes after the next meeting, then it's, it has to start over again.
So it'll go to advertising.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes our policies. Just a reminder. There's one more? No, that got pulled.
I got pulled, wellness.
Those are the two at the beginning that I said that were pulled.
Oh, I have 11:30.
Oh, those are ones we
No,
pulled.
those are, yeah, those are the extra ones that were pulled during, it's okay. No,
Fine with that.
all right, it's okay. That concludes our policies. Just a reminder that everyone will see these policies a couple more times as we bring them back to board meetings for approval. We will now have open to the board. Ms. Roberts, anything? Ms. Pritchett?
No, I'm good. Just one quick thing. South Fork is having a Bulldog Closet invitation for Saturday from 12 to 3. So anyone who's interested, I just think it's really cool what they're doing, and they're working with Indiantown as well. And I just think it's a nice way to kind of kick off the year with what they're doing. So if anyone is around on Saturday from 12 to 3, they will have their Bulldog Closet open.
Thank you. Ms. Powers? Mr. Main? Okay. This workshop is now adjourned. Your attention. We are going to call this special meeting of the Martin County School Board to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Powers and a second by Ms. Pritchett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we will move on to our action-only item. Item number 3.01, Report of Financial Data to the Commissioner of Education, ESE 348 and 145 for fiscal year 23-24. Are there any questions from the board?
Move approval of 3.01.
I have a motion by Ms. Powers. Yes, you have a question?
I had a question.
No,
A
it's,
second
no, go,
for discussion, yeah.
yes, and a second by Ms. Pritchett. Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
So Carter, on your 145, it's the sub-object expenditure. Sub-object 651. I'm noting that our school bus replacements last year from capital projects was 1. And the prior year was 9. Did we do the same 10, is that considered the same 10 buses?
Through the chair, yes, Mrs. Roberts, typically we advertise in our trim package the replacement of 10 school buses. There are and the ESC buses do cost a little bit more based on the additional equipment that's required. But sometimes we don't fulfill all the orders in 1 year at one time. So the 1.3 million would probably be the 10 buses, because on average, they're about 100,000. And then the 947 would probably be just maybe 9 we got that year fulfilled in the order, but we typically replace about 10 per year.
Right, so I'm just asking if you can go back and look and see if in the prior fiscal year we did do 10, and if the price has gone up 30% average for our buses, or if we actually did a different number and the unit cost has not gone up 30%.
Yes, ma'am, we'll do that research for you.
Okay, thank you, and I'm sure the whole board's interested. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, but 30% in 1 year is,
Well, he said it might have only been 9.
yeah, but if you can get us that information, that would be good to know. But thank you.
Yeah, more like 50. Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Powers and a second by Ms. Pritchett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We will now have open to the public. We do not have any comment cards at this time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak? Seeing none, that concludes our public comment. We will now have open to the board. Ms. Roberts? Ms. Pritchett? Ms. Powers? Mr. Main? Thank you very much. This meeting is now adjourned.